I grew up having a lot of health problems and having a lot of issues with self-perception and low self-esteem and just like body issues. And it was the first time that I looked at myself and I was like, wow, like I actually love myself for who I am right now, um, in this moment.
Psychedelics are said to shift our fixed perspectives, giving us a bird's eye view of our own lives and helping to remove the lenses of cultural, religious, and social conditioning through which we are taught to see the world. They are being used therapeutically and somatically to treat depression, addiction, PTSD, and trauma, and many are using them to explore the ineffable, those unknown realms of consciousness and beyond. Join us in Adventures of the Psyche as we learn how psychedelics have transformed people's lives. Welcome, friends, to Adventures of the Psyche. Today we are joined by Yarelix Estrada, whose first LSD experience broke through her angry exterior and showed her how to stop hating the world. Yarelix is a first-generation Central American drug policy and harm reduction researcher, community outreach worker for overdose prevention, and psychedelic community organizer. She is currently working as a city research scientist with the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, conducting community-based substance use, harm reduction, outreach, and research.
I'm going to set the stage of who I was and who I was before I started working with psychedelics. And that extends past myself. It extends into my parents and my grandparents, and our history. So my mom is from Panama and my dad's from Nicaragua. Um, and they came to this country like a lot of other people have come to this country to have better opportunities for their family and search for a better life. Specifically with my dad, he came over to the US because he was in the Sandinista Contra War. And in order to escape that and not be killed, he came to this country. But in that war, he dealt with a lot of trauma, which I think carried into how he dealt with others and how he dealt with his emotions once he got to this country. Um, and that kind of ties into my parents and their dynamic. Like they're loving parents, they're wonderful, but they're really intense and very angry. And I think that that carried into how I was when I was growing up because I was also very intense and very angry. So when I was a teenager, I was like, first I was like a rocker and I would have like the little studded bracelets and like wearing all black. And then as I progressed in my identity, I became like a hardcore kid and I had like the hair that stood up and like the long raccoon tails. And I used to go to death metal shows and hardcore shows and fight people. And that was kind of my way of releasing myself, of like feeling that intensity. And I guess that was my version of having some happiness back then. Um, but I think that was also kind of a way of like dealing with my negative emotions. Like at that time, I had like two friends. I didn't have a lot of people. I avoided people often. And my way of like perceiving the world was like, I hate everyone. Everyone's annoying. I don't like people. Um, and I think that was just trying to hide the fact that I had issues with depression. I had anxiety. Um, and it kind of went unchecked for a while. I went to college, and once I got to college, I developed panic disorder. So all of those kind of negative emotions stayed there. Um, but it all changed when I did acid for the first time. So my best friend, he came to visit one day, or we were talking or something, and he was like, "Hey, do you want to do acid?" And I was like, "I don't know." Like at the time, I had done mushrooms like maybe once, and it was a generally positive experience, but it was also really weird. 'Cause I was just like, I don't know what I experienced. Like I might be interested, but also I'm like, I don't know. And so I thought about it. I was like, let me get back to you. So that morning I went out and did groceries, and I was in Baltimore as I was still in college. And I remember when I was coming out of the grocery store, there was this giant white sign that said "Feel free," and I had never seen the sign before. And I was just like, this is a literal giant sign telling me to do things that are being free. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna do acid. So I hit up my best friend and I was like, let's do it. And we dropped, and we ended up taking our school shuttle. We were at Johns Hopkins at the time, over to the Inner Harbor, which is like the most touristic part, probably the most touristic part of Baltimore, that has a bunch of shops and like water and sightseeing. And I felt like everything was bright and beautiful, and like the harbor felt like it was a completely new experience, even though it wasn't. And um, as time went on, it felt like everything was new. Like I was seeing everything for the first time and being amazed by like every single little thing that I saw. Um, I remember it was winter, and there was like a frozen wave, and I was just like, "Oh my god!" for too long, honestly. But that was kind of like what started unlocking some of the joy and like the wonder in life and the happiness that I had not really felt much at that time. Um, so after that, we walked over to the other part of the Inner Harbor to this museum called the American Visionary Art Museum. And it's like basically a museum where people go to trip. Like Alex Gray has had his art exhibited there, and a lot of other visionary artists had their art exhibited there. And we just walked around and like stared at art that looked like it was holographic or like popping out of the walls for a long time, and would have moments when we're both like staring and realize that we're staring for too long, and then look at each other and just like laugh. And we did that for like hours, until we ended up leaving and going to Federal Hill, which was like this giant hill that was next to the museum. And it was frosty, so I feel like we almost fell climbing up, but it just like felt like we had to climb up. I feel like sometimes when I trip, I get these like stupid or like random inclinations, like we need to do things this way. And so we do them, even if they're kind of like not the safest thing to do. So we like climbed up the side of this icy hill. And when we got to the top, it was completely empty. And at the top, there's like this playground that has like swings and slides and things like that. And I think because it was winter and because the sun was setting, there just wasn't anyone there. So we got on the swings and we swung, and we just had so much fun. And I remember as I was swinging, I had this idea, and I was with my best friend. I was like, Jeff, when we grow up, we need to have acid days. Like we need to just like take time off, take acid, go to a park, swing on some swings. And then I remember also having the thought of like, I want to dedicate my life to this. Like I don't know what that means. I don't know um how that's going to happen, but I want to dedicate my life to this, like to have letting other people experience this, or to like to continue feeling this way. And I meant it, and that's kind of why I'm still here doing this work. And I currently work doing overdose prevention work for the Department of Health where I live. And basically, just my job is to help people do drugs safely. And I don't just do that with like regular drugs. I also organize the New York City Psychedelic Society that helps people figure out how to, engage in a positive relationship with psychedelic substances. So after that, we departed, and I headed home, and I just had like this whole range of emotions, of positive emotions that I had not felt. Like I was just like not used to feeling all of that. And I remember when I got home, I got a mirror and I looked at myself, and it was the first time that I looked at myself and didn't see a loathing self-critic, but I saw someone with loving eyes that had self-acceptance that I had never felt before. I grew up having a lot of health problems and having a lot of issues with self-perception and low self-esteem and just like body issues. And it was the first time that I looked at myself and I was like, wow, like I actually love myself for who I am right now, um, in this moment. And that moment of self-acceptance and that immense, like overwhelming feeling of self-love was something that I can always turn back to, and over time, like I've had similar experiences, and it's allowed me to break out of my social anxiety. I mean, I still have social anxiety, but it allows me to work outside of that hindrance that I used to have, and I can organize, I can do work with people. Like almost all my jobs are community engagement because I love working with people and helping people. And I wouldn't have been able to have the life that I have now and the experiences that I have now if it wasn't for that initial experience that I had that day.
Wow, thank you so much, Yarelix. You said that the frozen wave and your adventures in that touristic part of town unlocked parts of you that haven't released in forever. And now that you've had some years to process this, and like we've all learned language when we're working in this psychedelic field, do you have a theory as to what happened?
I recently started doing parts work, like internal family systems work. And I actually recently had an LSD experience. Some things came up and it was helpful for self-reflection, but the next day I just felt so happy. Like just like like when I get too happy, I become a little reckless because I'm like, I should eat bad things, they taste good, and we should go out and we should like do all these things. It doesn't matter what how much it costs. And it becomes a little like childish. And then I've come to realize that like there's a part of me that's very like spontaneous and childish and like and wants fun and these types of things, and I often don't let that part of me come out because I'm type A. I'm super type A. I have like 60 to-do lists scattered all around my room at any point in time, and I overcommit myself, so I often have too much to do. And I think acid just like reminds me like, hey, you have this joy in you, you have this child that wants to play, so like let it, let it play, like let her play. And I think that's what was happening. I was kind of like getting in touch with that joyful playful part of myself and just being amazed at like every little thing.
And so, in your day to day life, how do you bring in those lessons that you've learned in the psychedelic space? How do you reconnect to the self love?
I don't feel that I've learned anything from the psychedelic space. I feel like these are all tools that I've learned outside of that, because it's been like a lot of personal work. Meditation helps a lot. Connecting with loved ones and like reminding and like having conversations about things that bring us joy. I often like stay up super late doing work or wake up really early to do work or like do both, and between making time to do things that make me happy or slowing down and remembering all of the positive experiences that I've had through like my journeys with psychedelics, like that always is like a grounding experience to be like, there's more to life than just this frustrating stuff that we're dealing with right now. There's so much going on in the world and even just around us and in our communities that it's pretty easy to forget that there's still a lot of joy that we can have.
Thank you so much for joining us, Yarlix.
Yeah, thank you for having me.